Hey guys, welcome back, or welcome if you are new. I hope you're having a fantastic day. In this video, I want to share a post-burn review of Kringle Candle Snow Walk. This is one of 6 new fragrances that was released from Kringle Candle for holiday 2025. If you have missed it, I have already reviewed 3 of the fragrances. You can find those on my Kringle Candle playlist on my main channel page, but I'll also just go ahead and list and link the reviews that I've already completed in the description box below this video. If you'd like to go watch any of those reviews because they didn't show up in your subscription feed, you can find the links down there. Also, at the very top of the description box, I'll put a link to where to shop with Kringle Candle. I will also put a discount code down there that will save you 15% off of your purchase over at Kringle. That way, if you don't have any rewards that you can apply, you can at least save yourself a little bit of money. So anyway, you might be kind of surprised at my review of this particular fragrance because if you're not familiar with this scent, it's got some peppermint in it, and if you have been with my channel for any amount of time really, and you watch a lot of my home fragrance related content, you've probably heard me talk about a few different home fragrance notes that I just don't really personally care for. Talk a lot about eucalyptus. I tend to be pretty picky about caramel and maple. Those tend to go a little bit cloying to my nose most times. And also anything mint, anything in the mint family is a little bit of a struggle for me. Peppermint, spearmint, not so much sweet mint. I feel like sweet mint is a little bit different, but specifically peppermint and spearmint are a little tough for me personally because I guess I just don't necessarily want my house to smell like chewing gum. And in my weird little brain, peppermint and spearmint are just associated with gum. That's probably not the case for everybody. I know there are a lot of people that really love peppermint scents, especially around the holidays. So you peppermint people are going to be really pleased with this one. But also the rest of us who kind of struggle with peppermint, you might actually want to consider this one because I have actually found this quite tolerable. And I think it's mostly because there is some other stuff happening in this particular fragrance outside of just the peppermint. So yeah, I have actually been, dare I say, borderline enjoying this one. I almost hate to admit it because I'm really not a peppermint person, and I don't say that I have been converted because that's not true. There are still a lot of other peppermint scents out on the market right now that I will not be touching with a 10-foot pole. But if you want peppermint that also has something else going on in it, this might be the fragrance for you. So let's go ahead and dig into Snow Walk and talk a little bit about why this is actually a somewhat enjoyable peppermint to my nose. So let's go ahead and dig in. As always, we'll start with the scent description, then we'll go through the top, middle, and base notes. I will tell you what my nose smells in this fragrance. Then we'll dig into the overall strength and throw, and then address the burn quality. There is something interesting that I have noticed with this particular fragrance that I have not experienced with some other fragrances, just in terms of the wax. So I'll talk about that towards the end of the video. It hasn't created a problem per se. I just have found it to be kind of interesting. So anyway, we'll get there. All right, the description for Snow Walk reads, Snow Walk feels like a quiet stroll through freshly fallen snow. Cool peppermint and creamy vanilla swirling in the crisp winter air. White chocolate and cocoa butter melt into soft woods and musk, wrapping you in cozy stillness. It's sweet, serene, and made for magical moments. All right, the top notes here are vanilla and peppermint. The mid notes are white chocolate and sandalwood. And then at the base, we have vanilla and musk. All right, so what's going on in this fragrance. This is one of those where I feel like for the most part, I actually smell almost every single one of these notes. I didn't really necessarily get all of the notes on cold sniff before I started burning this one. It was a little bit more, I would say, peppermint forward on cold sniff. But when this is lit, these other notes really do come to life. And this goes from being almost an exclusively like peppermint type set from cold sniff to a really yummy, creamy, more creamy peppermint experience, I guess you could say. There's also just a little bit of an interesting aspect that comes into play from both the sandalwood and the musk notes here. So when this is burning, I very much get a really nice creamy vanilla bean note. It doesn't smell like French vanilla. It doesn't have that like custardiness to it at all. So it's very distinctly vanilla bean to my nose. The peppermint is, I mean, it's very minty. I feel like, honestly, and I don't mean this necessarily in a bad way, but I feel like a lot of times peppermint, no matter who the home fragrance company is, kind of always smells the same to me. And to my nose, usually peppermint in home fragrance smells like those after dinner mints, you know, the red and white ones, the round ones that you can get at most restaurants as you're walking out the door. That is like the peppermint note that I smell in here. But I would say this is maybe about like 40% peppermint. And then there is another healthy like 40% vanilla bean, which I think is the right proportion for the vanilla because it really does create a more creamy experience and it takes away some of the sharpness that I feel like my nose gets from specifically peppermint. Now, I do smell a little bit of a like different type of creaminess in here, which honestly is probably the like cocoa butter type note. To my nose, cocoa butter and white chocolate really kind of come off the same in home fragrance. So I'm gonna go with just like you are sticking your nose into a tub of like cocoa butter. That's definitely a decent part of this fragrance. And I think again, it helps to tone down the peppermint here. Now, the musk. I definitely smell a little bit of a muskiness in here, which comes off as more of like a clean white musk. Ever so slightly perfumey, but just mostly just a clean white, maybe slightly perfumey type of musk note. I like it. I don't want to scare off the people that are afraid of musk because it's not a huge part of this fragrance and your nose may not even pick it up, but I definitely get a little bit of that in here. But yeah, overall, I have to admit that this is actually a pretty decent peppermint scent. Am I going gaga over it? No. I mean, listen, I don't think peppermint is ever going to be one of those fragrance notes that I am going to be seeking out like it's my job. I have other notes that I personally prefer around the holidays, but if you are a fan of peppermint, you might want to consider this one. I feel like Kringle has done some other kind of creamy peppermint scents in the past, and they have also been, I would say, mostly tolerable. And I think this one here is probably maybe the most enjoyable that I have smelled out of the Kringle peppermint lineup that I've sniffed through. I think it's actually a pleasant fragrance. Am I going to repurchase it? No. Would I ever purchase it in a larger format? No, also no. Because first of all, I think a jar like this would honestly last me a really long time. Peppermint is not going to be something that I light on a daily basis. I am actually gonna keep this one. I had thought about like giving it to one of my friends or something, but I think I might actually keep it for around Christmas and see about mixing this with some of my other favorite tree fragrances from Kringle, from Voluspa, from some other candle companies that I enjoy tree scents from. I think this would honestly, because of the amount of vanilla in here, would make it kind of a nice blender type fragrance. And I think that also having some tree type notes going along with this would make it even more enjoyable. So I think there are ways for me to kind of play around with this particular fragrance in the upcoming months here that might actually make this even more enjoyable for me. And I think it's good to challenge yourself every now and then to try a different fragrance family. Even if you're like, ugh, I don't think I'm gonna like this. Listen, I've come around to a lot of things in my, years of candle burning here. So I think it is possible for people to come around to different fragrances. Sometimes you just won't ever, but I always think it's worth trying new things, right? Anyway, so in terms of the scent itself, I would say it is likable for someone like me who doesn't typically gravitate towards peppermint. If you just don't like peppermint, skip it. If you are curious about it, but you're not ready to fully commit, check out those daylights, people. I always will push the daylights first. If you are unsure about something, you can always come back and purchase the full size. These are these seasonal fragrances, which means that if this 2-wick version here sells out, during the time that you're like trying to make up your decision, it will be repoured. So these are holiday scents. This is the seasonal collection that gets released, and they do repour these when they go out of stock. Probably not repoured like a week before Christmas, but if this sells out, for example, before the end of November, it will be back. Strength and throw. So pretty good performance here. I would say a solid 7 in terms of strength, and I would also say a pretty solid 7 in terms of throw. I do have to be mindful about what else I'm burning alongside this. I have found, for example, that blending this with like spicy pumpkin scents, that's not a great combo, so don't do that. But it is strong enough to where you're gonna have to be somewhat mindful about what you're pairing alongside this. I honestly don't have a ton of stuff right now that I think goes really well, other than Kringle Christmas Tree Farm. I think that goes really well, and there's a couple more scents that I'm gonna be reviewing here over the next few days that also pair decently. They're all from the same holiday collection, so maybe that's why they work so well together. But yeah, strong enough to where you're gonna have to be mindful about where you're pairing with this if you do burn multiple candles at a time. Let's talk about the overall burn quality. So far, this is probably my least burned, but I have done at least 4 4-hour burns on this one. So I have definitely given it the old college try. No issues at all with the burn, if you will. So far, so good. This does form some, I would say, fairly decent mushroom tops that you're gonna wanna trim on each of these subsequent burns. But here's the thing that I've noticed that's kind of interesting, because I find that for the most part, the Kringle wax color on their 100% soy formulation typically doesn't change. However, you can very distinctly see how deep the wax pool gets with this one because of the discoloration that has happened with the wax here. I'm gonna zoom you guys in, and sorry if you can hear Penny. She is underneath my feet right now, and she's a little grumpy today. But do you see that discoloration in the wax there? That doesn't typically happen for me when it comes to Kringle. I'm wondering if it has to do with specifically the peppermint oils. Because I don't, gravitate towards a lot of peppermint just on my own. I'll definitely review it if it is kindly sent to me. But yeah, I typically don't seek out these peppermint candles on my own. So this could be something that you may have noticed in the past, but It's kind of new for me. So yeah, it's like the wax almost turns like a really like super, super light blushy pink shade. It's definitely different from the creaminess that you see towards the bottom of the candle there. So that little white line of demarcation there is the very bottom of the wax pool, where that changes into an even lighter color than the original wax that you see down here. So where's my finger? There it is. Yeah, so it's just kind of interesting to see that color variation because I typically don't experience that. So anyway, moral of the story here is that, yeah, you guys, this is a peppermint scent, and while I'm not gonna give it 2 thumbs up, I will give it 1 thumbs up. 1 thumb, singular thumb, just because I am actually somewhat enjoying this. Like I said, it's not gonna be a repurchase for me, but I am gonna keep this and I am gonna bust it out once my Christmas trees make their appearance in early November. Yep, I'm one of those people. But yeah, I'll report back on what I think blends really well with this one. So if you decide to challenge yourself, maybe you can get some ideas on what you can pair alongside this and maybe try to embrace a different fragrance family. All right, that's everything for this one. I appreciate you guys so much. Only a couple more reviews to go. So if you are not already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Like I said, you can find all of my Kringle candle reviews on my Kringle candle playlist on my main channel page. Also check out the description box. I'll put some links there to some other videos, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Toodaloo.